If one thing has become clear during the course of this pandemic, it's that our leaders simply don't care at all about the well-being and welfare of the people they're supposed to represent and lead. And it's not that they hate us. You hear that a lot. They hate us. No, hatred would require a passion that they don't possess. It would mean that they care, if in the wrong way. What we get from Washington instead is much more banal, much emptier, worse even. What we get is disregard, indifference, neglect. And this is, put it mildly, not the attitude you want from your lawmakers at any time, and especially not at a time like this. It was easy to predict this, in hindsight or even in foresight. If you have a group of people in charge who don't really care what happens to you or your family, and also don't really care about the law, then a pandemic hits, what are they likely to do? They're not just going to leave you to your own devices, which would have certainly been preferable, but they are going to do that because they want to appear like they're doing something. Also, they realize that they're being presented with a profound opportunity to seize more power and influence. So instead, they shut everything down, tell you to stay home, tell your children to skip school for a year, tell you not to visit your elderly parents or let your children see their friends, and then pat themselves on the back when the numbers go down. When the numbers go up, as they have, they will just blame you for not listening to their instructions. No concern for your overall health and well-being, no concern for your quality of life, no concern for your life at all, no concern for your child's education, none of that. You're just a number, a statistic. What do they care how a statistic feels? Why should they care about a number's suffering? This dynamic was thrown into sharp relief this week with the stimulus bill that Congress came up with in a compromise. Now, you always know you're in trouble whenever there's a bipartisan compromise. People always love bipartisan compromises. I don't. It's bad enough when one party has a bad idea, but when they both agree on a bad idea, it has to be especially horrendous. And it is. The bill, 5,000 pages long, totaling almost $1 trillion in spending, would, among other things, many other things, which we'll get to in a minute, provide $600 checks to some Americans. Now, some lawmakers have objected to this portion, including Rand Paul, who should be commended at least for objecting at all, but his objection might miss the point a little bit. Listen.
Why stop at $600 a person? Why not $1,000? Why not $2,000? Maybe these new free money Republicans should join the Everybody Gets a Guaranteed Income caucus. Why not $20,000 a year for everybody? Why not $30,000? If we can print up money with impunity, why not do it? The Treasury can just keep printing the money. That is, until someone points out that the emperor has no clothes and that the dollar no longer has value. To so-called conservatives who are quick to identify the socialism of Democrats, if you vote for this spending monstrosity, you are no better. When you vote to pass out free money, you lose your soul and you abandon forever any semblance of moral or fiscal integrity.
Now, I agree that the government spends too much and is spending too much in this bill, as always. It's $1 trillion, absurd. But when it comes to the direct payments to individuals, there are two ways of looking at it. One is that the federal government shouldn't be giving anything to anybody in this case. The states are the ones that have imposed these lockdowns. Why should a taxpayer in, say, North Dakota have to bail out a small business owner in New York? Shouldn't New York do that? It's New York's fault. This line of thinking would lead to Congress spending $0 on direct payments. The other line of thinking is that the federal government is also responsible for pushing the lockdowns, especially through mouthpieces like Fauci and Birx. And besides, as this line of thinking would go, whoever is to blame, the fact is that millions of Americans are in dire straits through no fault of their own. It was public policy on whatever level that brought us here. We pay Congress to help solve problems like this. Now they need to do their jobs. But that's going to require a lot more than $600 for the people who need it. Now, place the blame wherever you want. The fact is that the government has shut down entire industries, prevented millions of people from going to work, bankrupted businesses, thrown families into financial ruin and destitution. The government did this. If the government tells you that you aren't allowed to go to work, or that as a business owner you aren't allowed to serve customers, or you could only serve 30% of your customers, the government is taking from you, and it owes you restitution, compensation. This isn't welfare. This isn't the normal sugar daddy routine from the government. This is about Americans getting what they're actually owed, actually entitled to. an entitlement in the true sense of the word. The whole problem with what we normally call entitlements is precisely that the people getting them are not entitled to them. In this case, they are. But the problem is that $600 is an insult. It's a slap in the face. It's worse than nothing. It's the equivalent of, on a smaller scale, when I was delivering pizzas as a teenager, and one time the customer was mad that his order was late. Not my fault, by the way. So he paid his bill and then pulled out a nickel to hand it to me as a tip. He meant it as an insult. And if it was like 50 cents, at least, maybe I would have taken it. But even I won't lower myself for a nickel. This is like that. They're tossing a nickel at the people that they have bankrupted. $600 may as well be a nickel if you just lost your business, or about to lose your house, can't afford food, and so on. If you have, say, $4,000 of necessary monthly spending, including mortgage and food and utilities and all that, car payment, whatever, $600 isn't better than nothing. It is nothing. It gets you nowhere. It does nothing for you. And it gets worse. The bill also includes all sorts of goodies put in there by various politicians for the sake of their special interests. Tom Elliott with Grabian Media has a good thread on this. Let me read some of what he found in this bill. And this doesn't even begin to cover it, as the thing is, again, 5,000 pages long. There is no good reason for a piece of legislation to be 5,000 pages long, or even 100 pages, or even 50 pages. All of those extra pages give you stuff like this, as Elliott documents, quoting from his thread, says the COVID relief bill lays groundwork for a climate security advisory council. The COVID relief bill also includes $10 million for gender programs in Pakistan. Not exactly sure what that even is. The COVID relief bill sets aside funds to investigate the 1908 Springfield race riot. The bill includes a lengthy subsection titled the Horse Racing Integrity and Safety Act of 2020. The bill creates a committee regulating performance-enhancing drugs in horse racing. The bill outlays funds to address gender inequality amongst statues. Not sure I think we need to read closer into that one, but this is just what he's come up with. The COVID relief bill includes funds for a museum that will offer programming, education, exhibitions on the life, art, history, and culture of women. The COVID relief bill includes $1.5 million for the Appropriations Committee's Office of Diversity and Inclusion, as well as lots of money for receptions. And we could go on listing things. Again, 5,000 pages. That's 3 copies of War and Peace stacked on top of each other, and somehow even more boring to read, I'm sure. This is what we get. Our elected leaders playing games, tending to their special interests, while millions of Americans plunge into destitution. This should make us all. There's a lot of cheap outrage out there every day over dumb things. This is real. This is something that is really outrageous, that is really worthy of our outrage. Well, I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Matt Walsh Show. If you did, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right down there so you can stay up to date on all of our future content.